From folklore and fairies
to monsters and mysteries, it came from the Maritimes. In Davy Jones' locker, my co-host, Chelsea.
He has crossed oceans of time to find you. My co-host, Evan. Evan, do you know what my intro's from?
Not really, no.
It's from the 1992 Dracula. I'm not that creative. We can thank Gary Oldman and whoever wrote the line for that one.
I'll check it out. Well, howdy everyone, and welcome to It Came From The Maritimes. Today's topic is the polymorphic pinnipeds known as Selkies. This episode discusses death, abusive relationships, child abduction, and animal abuse. Selkies are common in many folklores, but in particular Celtic and Norse. It's likely that the Celtic people are the ones who brought the stories of Selkies to Canada, or at least first, and they are seals who can shed their seal skins and take on human form. If they are unable to find their seal skins afterwards, then they will be trapped in the human form, and this is a common theme for many of the stories, including the one that I'm going to tell you. But before I do, have you heard much about Selkies?
A little bit here and there. I remember when I was in, oh my goodness, it might have been grade 4. We read a book in class about Selkies, and then we had to write our own short story inspired by the book about Selkies, and I titled mine Funeral Magic.
Oh, Funeral Magic. The classic. I do remember Funeral Magic.
Yes, and it was about, I found it recently, that's why I have such a vivid recollection of something I wrote when I was 8. It was about a man who turned into a crow who was trying to capture a Selkie. That was my short story, so I had quite the imagination.
I'll need to give this a read.
I'll find it for you. It's a great product.
Please do. So in a small fishing village in Cape Breton, a mother had 3 sons. They were all grown, and on her deathbed, she told them that she wanted them to stay out of trouble, settle down, and find wives. They considered where they could find wives, and after discussing that there were no unmarried women of age, remembered that an old tale that they had heard. On nights of a full moon, at midnight, Selkie women will come out of the water, take human form, and dance with their sisters. The 3 brothers deliberated. The oldest brother wondered if it would be easier to kill his friend and take his wife.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The middle brother wondered if they would be attractive, and the youngest brother wanted to know what he would do if he felt he wasn't truly in love with the Selkie.
I guess he's the best of the 3 options, but still.
Yeah. They knew that they wanted to fulfill their mother's wish, so they waited until midnight. So yeah, overall, problematic all around, but the youngest one at least has somewhat good intentions, if not terrible reasoning.
Exactly. At least he's attempting to put some thought into their kidnap scheme.
Yeah. So at midnight, they crept down by the shore. The 2 oldest brothers waited to grab the skins of the most attractive woman, while the youngest brother timidly grabbed the skin closest to him. They all went out and hid the skins and returned to the shore to wait for the morning. As the rest of the Selkies returned to the water, there were 3 left behind, frantically looking for their skins. The brothers approached and told the woman that they would be their wives, and knowing that they didn't have their skins, the Selkies knew that they had to follow their commands.
These poor Selkies and these jerk brothers.
That's the thing, you feel bad for them. Time went on, and each of the Selkie wives gave each brother 3 children. After 10 years, the Selkies had mostly accepted their place and had stopped looking for their skins. Every month, they still went down to the shore and watched their sisters dance, but they knew that due to the shame of losing their skins, they could never join them. One day, the middle brother bragged to his oldest son about how he had hid the skin under a rock that was under a board, which was under a bale of hay in the barn. The child did as children do, and immediately told his mother.
Good for him.
I know. I mean, he's part Selkie, so he does have some allegiance. And also, if you tell a child anything,
they're going to tell someone.
Exactly. The mother immediately got the skin and ran away from her husband and children, never to return. The same night, it was a full moon, and the youngest brother's wife asked if she could have her skin back, just for the night, so she could go dance with her sisters. The youngest brother tearfully gave it to her, as he knew she would never return. And despite how their relationship was started, he did truly love her. The oldest brother was paranoid at this point, as his 2 brothers had lost their wives on the same day. He decided to burn his wife's skin, but upon throwing it into the fireplace, the oil from the sealskin splashed out and lit the house on fire. The house burned down with the oldest brother inside and trapping his wife in human form forever.
Man, I don't want to say people deserve to die that way, but he was up to some shady stuff, that's for sure.
I feel like the oldest brother was kind of the worst of them. It kind of came back at him.
Exactly. I feel bad for his Selkie wife being trapped in human form, though.
So do I. The next day, the youngest brother's wife returned. She found that she truly loved the man who gave her freedom, and they continued to raise their children together, with her coming and going as she pleased. They also took the oldest brother's wife and children, and the middle brother's children, as they didn't want anything to do with him after losing their mother. Overall, it seems like the youngest brother just has 9 children and an extra widowed woman that they're raising with a Selkie, but...
So a happy-ish ending.
Happy-ish. Problematic relationship, but it's a fairy tale. This is an old story. This is kind of a trope of fairy tale, so we can't really be mad for something from something so old.
Exactly. It did remind me a bit of that mermaid story I shared in the mermaid sighting episode, where the man prevented his mermaid wife from returning to the sea, but the kids helped.
Yeah, and that's
helped her out in the end.
That's actually interesting, and I'll talk about this a little bit soon, but apparently in Gaelic stories particularly, they never really differentiate between Selkies and mermaids. They're kind of almost the same thing.
That's
so
really
I think that's
interesting.
why a lot of the mermaid and Selkie stories are very similar.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk a little bit about Selkie lore. Selkies are, I'd say, most commonly associated with northern Scotland, and they're sometimes helpful and friendly, and other times can be quite dangerous.
Similar to seals in general.
I guess so. Sorry, you just said that with such a distinct thing.
Once I was in a motorboat with a friend, and the seal got very curious and at first was just following along, but eventually seemed like it wanted to hop into the boat.
Oh.
But eventually it disappeared, but I've been cautious around them ever since.
I like that that's your threshold for danger. Something wanted to spend time with me. Poor Jeff. So often... the human forms of Selkies are quite attractive, and they often are seen to be seducing humans. As I just mentioned, in Gaelic stories, they're not really differentiated from mermaids, and that probably explains why some of the mermaid stories are similar, and also probably explains some of the attractiveness, because I find also mermaids are considered to be quite attractive in their stories.
Mm-hmm.
In Orkney lore, they are specifically from seals that are greater in size than grey seals. So it's thought to be Greenland seals and crested seals specifically are Selkies. And if you want to search them up, look up crested seals because they have some interesting noggins there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's almost like a
little plate on their head or something.
Like a flat shell on its head.
Yeah, so
and I just looked up a picture of the other type of seal, and it's the chunkiest little thing I've ever seen in my life.
I mean,
it's got rolls on those rolls.
Well, I'm going to get back to things. So Selkie stories have a couple of common forms. One form is the Selkie wife, which is, oh my goodness, you're right, that guy's just lounging too. Sorry, Chelsea just showed me the picture and he does look like he's relaxing there. So one form of the story is the Selkie wife, which includes the story that I just told. And in these stories, a man will steal a Selkie's skin and keep her as a wife, and then she often tries to get it back. Usually when she does get it back, she'll abandon the family, or maybe every once in a while the children will see a seal that's oddly kind to them or comes up to them when they're at the beach. Male Selkies, on the other hand, tend to seduce women who are unhappy in life, often women who have husbands who are away at sea. So that's kind of the opposite side of the Selkie wife trope. It's kind of Harlequin romance.
It is.
And then another form of the story is that Selkies can only transform in certain conditions. Some of the conditions include when the tides are just right, once every 7 years, and a couple of other things. And these stories often portray the Selkie being more of a curse, and sometimes they are condemned souls, fallen angels, or souls of the drowned.
My goodness.
Yeah, I find the Selkie wife is really the one that you hear the most, but there is some other sides to things. So the origin of Selkies is a little bit hard to track, but there's several theories about where this folklore comes from. One theory is that they saw people who had some deformities or genetic conditions. For example, the MacCodrum clan in Scotland was known for having syndactyly, which is growth between the fingers and toes, so it made their hands and feet look more flipper-like. So they would look more like a seal or be kind of like a cross between a seal and humans. Another theory was that some Nordic people would arrive and they would be in sealskin kayaks and clothing. And then when that person would, for example, a Scottish man would marry a Nordic woman, was the news was passed around, they might just misinterpret and say like, oh, this woman has shed her sealskin, meaning, oh, she's taken on Scottish culture. Or it might just mean that the Scottish people really had a misinterpretation of kayaks.
That's it. They took them very literally.
Yeah. And then, but I found that one really interesting. And I think that could be kind of what the likely explanation is.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah. The final one, which I don't think is really a great explanation, is that when shipwrecked Spaniards would come, they would have dark hair, which apparently resembled that of certain seals. And I think that this one just is more of a random one that was kind of put out by some people, but it doesn't feel as substantial as the other theories.
It's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. But overall, I find Selkie lore very interesting. Like we said, it is very linked with mermaids in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, any last thought about Selkies?
That was very interesting. Thank you for sharing those stories.
Anytime. So now I'm going to do a quick segment to finish off our episode. For this, similar to you, I'm going to take a little step back into our previous episodes, and I'm going to do a little quiz called Asking About Alliteration.
Oh, you know I love a good quiz.
In this, I'm going to tell you the alliteration that I used to introduce the episode, and you need to tell me which episode it was.
Oh, yes.
The first one is Metamorphic Mystery.
Oh, Lunenburg Werewolf?
You're right. Yes, because it shapeshifts, it's metamorphic.
Got it.
The next one is the Haunted Hallowed Halls.
Maritime University Ghosts.
You've got it, yeah. That one, I feel like that was what started it all with me doing alliteration for them.
How could you resist after that?
Honestly, I couldn't.
It's poetry.
And the last one is the Wailing Wretch.
Ooh. Oh, let me think. Oh, the Heidi-Hinder?
You're right, yes.
Woohoo, 3 for 3.
Heidi-Hinder of Dagger Woods.
I'm on fire.
I know, and that's, I ended it there because we only have so many episodes and some of them got really, really obvious.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how some of them turn out. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of It Came From The Maritimes. You can find us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at It Came From The Maritimes. And if you have any Atlantic Canada folklore you would like to see covered in future episodes, or any spooky encounters of your own, email us at itcamefromthemaritimes@gmail.com. If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It helps people find us. Now, at the end of every episode, we like to share a folklore tip, East Coast folklore tip at that. These aren't serious, it's just a little bit of fun that we like to have, so don't take it too seriously. The one this week, do you want to share it for us, Chelsea?
I would. A baby born with a caul over its face will never drown. Thanks for joining.
Bye.